Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, last week, I received confirmation for my flights, accommodation and registration for the Mobile World Conference, the MWC in Barcelona. But after a week where huge names such as LG, Ericsson, Nvidia, Intel, Sony and Amazon all pulled out, it wasn't too much of a surprise to see the event get cancelled. Now, for those of you that don't know, each year the MWC attracts 107,000 attendees and 2,400 exhibitors from over 200 countries. And it's not just about showcasing the latest mobile innovations, but this event is big business with an economic impact of around 492 million euros that generates 14,100 part-time jobs too. But of course, cancelling the event due to the coronavirus fears is a sensible choice, because I think gathering people from all over the world into a crowded exhibition would have been a little irresponsible. But what worries me is it could make large corporations think differently about how they spend their budgets in the future and think about hosting virtual conferences and summits rather than those physical trade shows and exhibitions. And you can hear my thoughts on that topic over on my tech column over at techhq.com. So if you go to techhq.com, you'll see what I think about the current state of exhibitions, conferences, the role of technology, virtual conferences, and much more. But today, I actually want to talk about the world of data, and more importantly, how our data is being used. So Dynata is one of the world's leading single providers of first-party data, contributed by people who opt in to member-based panels that the company manages and maintains. And they have a reach that encompasses an incredible 60 million people globally and an extensive library of individual profile attributes collected through those surveys that I talk about. Now, their latest report, though, reveals that consumers feel that companies just aren't being honest and direct about how they're using their data and just don't understand what they're actually getting from this relationship. So, while there has been a concerted effort to push for greater transparency and better value exchange, there really does seem to be significant confusion about those topics and the language brands use to talk about them. So today, I want to take you all to Connecticut over in the US, where Jackie Lorch at Dynata is waiting to talk with me all about the report, her insights, and so much more. So let's get Jacqueline on the podcast now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. It's a real pleasure to be here and talk about this with you today. I lead a team of researchers at Dynata, and we focus on the methodology of research and really, how we can help our clients keep getting reliable data for consumers and business people, really data that they can trust to make decisions about their business and how to grow it. And my team also does a lot of research on research, so we can understand how people want to communicate, what they want to share, and when and with what device in a world where, attitudes about privacy as well as technology are really rapidly changing, as we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely. And starting straight on that, according to new data, I read that consumers now feel companies just are not being honest and direct about how they're using their data, and they don't understand what they're getting out of this relationship. So can you set the scene and tell me a little bit more about this report and who you surveyed?
Yeah, we began a global trends report last year. So we've just finished and released results from the second edition of this. And we did it because we wanted to give our clients some more context around the data that they collect every day, some information about global trends and attitudes that they could help to give more color, really, to the data that they're gathering. So we asked about a lot of broad trends like optimism, climate change, media consumption. But we also wanted to ask about privacy and sharing personal information. We used all our Dynata panels globally to do this survey. We did it in 9 countries, Canada and the US, 4 countries in Europe, which was UK, France, Netherlands, and Germany, and then also in Australia, China, and Japan. So obviously there are some big markets that are not in that list, but we chose those 9 because they account for over 80% of market research spend globally. So they really are the audiences that researchers and business wants to hear from heavily. So we did this. We chose those countries. We asked a lot of questions, and we got some interesting information about a whole range of topics.
And we'll delve into some of those results in just a few moments, because there's going to be a lot of familiar topics that we've all heard about. But before we delve into that, I mean, was there anything in the report that surprised you?
Yeah, there were a number of things. And I think when I think about the privacy and trust issue, I think it's the high level of people saying that they feel like they've lost control over how personal information is collected and used by companies. 80% said that. And even countries that were on the lower end of the scale last year, the Asia Pacific companies have risen in their scores on that. So there's more concern over that. And then 70% said that they think that companies have actually been dishonest about how they're using their personal data. So how high those numbers are, I think, surprised us. We knew there was a concern, but there's obviously a really high level of concern, and the levels are rising since last year. I think the other thing that we perhaps thought was that younger people are not so concerned about this, that they don't have these fears about privacy. But there's nothing in our analysis that suggests that this is going to get better in the future on its own, because younger generations appear to be just as much concerned. And so we have a real challenge here to really retain and rebuild consumer trust.
Excellent. And it does seem to be this big push for greater transparency and better value exchange now. But can you tell me more about why there still is so much significant confusion around these topics and the kind of language brands use to talk about them? Because on one hand, they're saying they care about privacy, but their actions are completely different. And equally, I suppose, as users, we say we care about privacy, but our actions are completely different too.
Yeah, I do think there's confusion, and this confusion of terms as well. I mean, what is a value exchange, and what do we mean by that? I think that there's been a feeling, or perhaps a hope, that we can just buy ourselves out of the trust issue that consumers have about sharing information. And I think what's clear from our data is that the idea of a value exchange, where if it's just discounts or coupons, has got less traction than a trust relationship. So only a third of people that in our study said that they were going to feel more comfortable if valuable benefits were offered in exchange for their data. So it isn't just transactional. It's not just standard, as I say, discounts. There's more subtlety to it. There's more thinking we have to do about what really a value exchange means. About less than half of people we surveyed this year said that they wanted to get discounts and other perks, or that was high on their list in exchange for giving us information. So I think that I agree with you. I think that the clarity of what we really mean by a fair value exchange is really important to think about.
And 70% of consumers agree that companies have been completely dishonest about how their data is used. So a question I've got to ask is, it can be incredibly confusing for a business. I mean, how can businesses tackle the problem and deliver those personalized experiences which they're being told their customers are demanding, but do it in a way without being creepy?
Right, absolutely, the creepy factor. I think it starts with the awareness, and that's really important, to understand what consumers are thinking, how concerned they are, and I think it's also important to realize that consumers are not just worried about it, but they're actually starting to take action. A quarter of our respondents told us that they've actively avoided websites, or they've left them during a visit because they're worried about privacy of their data. Similar number, they've actually deleted an app that they had on their phone, or they didn't download an app, or they adjusted privacy settings, or even some of them told us that they had decided not to buy a product because of privacy concerns. And that last one has risen quite a lot from last year. I think 9% last year said that, and 13% this year. So, these are all lost sales opportunities and really cause for concern. So if it's not discounts and similar benefits that consumers want, we have to understand what is it that they want. What can we do to make sure that they trust us and they're still going to be willing to give us their information? And as we look at the data and as we sort of understand this from running our own panels where we ask people for a lot of information, it really does come down to transparency and giving consumers control and giving them choice as well.
And on a much more positive note, I mean, 80% of consumers are much more willing to share data if brands are more transparent about their plans for what they're going to do with that data. But what does that look like, do you think? I mean, do you have any use cases that you could possibly share that will just help everyone listening understand the landscape and how they can act better on that?
Yeah. So I can share what people are telling us and then kind of explain a bit about what we're doing when we gather information from people. People told us that they want transparency about how are you actually going to use my data. So why are you gathering it? That's one thing that's really important to people. And then on the control, let me opt out of data sharing. Some people felt that if they're forced to give a data that they don't want to, they're going to be forced into giving us false data, which we don't want at all, obviously. So give me that control, let me opt out of some things, and then make it easier for me to choose what I share and what I don't share. And then the last one was shorter and easier privacy agreements that I think we can all understand that. Obviously, we have to have legal agreements, but is there also wording that's consumer friendly that can explain, this is how we're going to use the data and this is how we're going to protect it? And I think the use case for us is all the experience we have in building panels and asking people for a lot of information about their lives. And what we try and do is explain a lot all along the way about what the survey taking experience is going to be like, what we're going to ask from them and what they will get from us. And also don't ask for a ton of information up front. We ask for a few basic data points up front. And then as they get to know us and they get to trust us and they understand what the situation is and what it's going to be like taking surveys, we ask them for more information, and we're able to get a lot of information from them because they know us. But it's an ongoing effort, explaining and educating and building that trust relationship. And I think it's similar for brands. We hear a lot about the need for brands to be authentic. And I think we achieve this when we speak our customers' language and we're open and honest about how we want to use their data. We found that in our study, a lot of people, if they know the company, they're going to be much more willing to give data points like a telephone. And also if we explain why we want your phone number, not just phone number with a box, but give us your phone number so we can follow up if there's an issue with delivering your package or whatever it is. So control and explanation, just really important. And then I think we really owe it to consumers to only gather the information we really need. Very often we gather a lot of nice to have information, but if we're not using it, don't burden the consumers and pull more information out of them. And of course, just be really good stewards of their data in terms of security. And I think overall, often we ask for a lot of information at the start of the relationship, which is hopefully going to be an ongoing, long-term, fruitful business relationship. So let's think about minimizing the information we ask for up front and let people get comfortable before we ask for more.
And what really interests me as well is, by complete contrast, only 27% of people said they would be more comfortable sharing data if valuable benefits were offered in exchange, because that feels like the complete opposite of what all those software vendors that are obviously selling personalization are saying out there. I mean, what do you think the answer is here?
Yeah, well, we were really interested in this whole idea of the attention economy, just a straightforward transaction. You give us data, you get paid. And we asked the question, and we did find a decent level of interest in that as a concept, and especially among younger generations. So then without talking about specific money amounts, we asked people, is the attraction there control, or is it the money that you're going to earn? And when we asked it that way, money did trump control, not by a lot, but it did. But then we started to introduce some specific money amounts. And we asked people, how would you feel if you could earn $1,000 a year for sharing your information? And of course, we adjusted the amount per country for equivalent purchasing power. And at that level, there was quite a lot of enthusiasm for that transaction. But then when we went down to perhaps more more reasonable amounts, like $250 a year, that fell away very swiftly. And when you got to $50 a year, 2/3 said they had no interest at all in that. So I think when you get to the reality of that, we have to emphasize the control probably over the money, just the money that you could earn. It really is control that is going to trump that when we get down to the specific money amounts. So yes, customers do understand that a value exchange works. And when we think about some of the apps we use, we tell the app a lot. The app knows a lot about us, where we're going, our travel patterns, our credit card information. But we are content with that because that app makes our lives much easier. So I think there is a value exchange to be had, but it's not a simple one. It's something that has to be carefully crafted and thought about.
In a world where we're more aware of privacy and authenticity, can you tell me more about how Dynata, you deliver the actual voice of the individual, but at scale to market researchers, marketers and advertisers, but also, most importantly, the kind of problems that you're solving for businesses?
Yeah, it's true. There's no decision today really in business that's not driven by data or needs some data in order to make it. So we've got a situation here, as we've been talking about, where we've got empowered consumers. They're taking action to protect their personal data, more reports about privacy and security issues. And then you've got corporations' almost insatiable appetite for data-driven insights. So there's a tremendous need, I think, to extend the use of the kind of fully permissioned first-party data that we at Dynata have at scale. So what we see today is that marketers really do want to micro-target, as you were talking about earlier, and they want to drill down so they can create that custom marketing. And then because we have so many people worldwide, we can find those niche markets. And then we consult with our clients about the right way to ask the question so that people will be comfortable and able to give us good information. And then, of course, we're giving consumers options about how they want to talk to us, what device it is, whether it's audio, tablet, PC. And then when you've got the information, I think what's really exciting for our customers is that once you've got that first-party data, you can use our platform to link it to other second and third-party data sources. So you get a more complete picture of your audience, your customer, and you really extend the power of that first-party data. And then we can do real-time measurement of campaigns to better reach audiences, and then we link this all together on our platform to give better insights. So I think with the challenges of gathering first-party data, it's really exciting that we have the ability to extend it at scale and get much more out of it as we gather it.
And is there anything else in that global trends report that you'd like to share with us all today?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about the challenges, but I would say the battle's not lost, because actually nearly 3/4 of the people we interviewed said that they would be willing to share data if there's a clear benefit for me. So as we've been talking about, it's really getting to grips with what that benefit is, and that it's not just monetary. When we talk to our panelists, we know at Dynata that people respond for a whole variety of reasons. They're curious about new products. They want their voice to be heard. They can get educated. So it's not just tangible rewards. And, I just, again, think we have to hold ourselves to really the highest standards when it comes to security in today's world, and then constantly look for opportunities to be transparent and give consumers options. And I think going back to our report, that the data we have shows that it really is a real challenge, but there are opportunities for companies here, because I think the ones that can act to build that trust relationship through the things we've been talking about, the transparency and the consumer choice, really have great opportunity to reap a lot of really terrific rewards in understanding consumers better.
Fantastic. Well, like you said, we have covered so many topics today, and I'm sure there's going to be a few people with even more questions after they've finished listening to this podcast. So can you remind everyone listening where they can find you online, and also contact your team if they've got any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of information at our website, dynata.com, and you can access the entire Global Trends report there that has a lot more on trust and all those other things I mentioned at the beginning, and also some reports that really drill down on some of the topics we've been talking about today. And you can also ask us questions and ask for more information.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the blog post that will accompany this podcast episode over on my website, techblogwriter.co.uk/Dynata. And I'll also include links to the Data Privacy Spotlight report that we talked about today. But more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to come on here and talk about that report in a little bit more detail, and also in a language that everyone can understand, and especially businesses as well, and how they can adapt to these changing attitudes. So thanks again, Jacqueline.
Thanks so much, Neil. It's really a pleasure.
So from that Data Privacy Spotlight report from Dynata, 70% of consumers agree that companies have been dishonest about how personal data is used. Completely understand that. And 80% of consumers would be more than willing to share data if brands were just a little bit more transparent about their plans for that data. And yet, and this is the bit where I find myself scratching my head, only 27% would feel more comfortable sharing data if the valuable benefits were offered in exchange. And that seems completely at odds with what all the personalizations companies are saying out there. So what I'd like to do is ask each and every one of you that are listening to this podcast in 165 countries what you think. So are you happy to sacrifice a little data if it improves your service? Are you happy for some companies, such as your favourite airline, sport team, restaurant or clothing store, to have more info than others? For example, an online store that you visit once a year. And what is the answer to personalisation without being creepy? And I know it's a pretty big question, and to be honest, there's probably enough room for debate in that argument for every single person that emails me to come on this podcast and talk about it. And if that's something you'd like to do, you're more than welcome to do just that. So whether you'd like to come on the podcast and talk about it, whether you'd like to just send me an email with a question or share your insights, or even just to say hello, whatever it is, I'm here for you. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can get me at Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And if you go to podcast, you'll find today's episode, and you'll also find links to that report that I was talking about. Now, I don't know if the world's spinning faster, but that episode seemed to fly by. So we've reached the end, but the only good thing about the world spinning faster and time going quicker, of course, is it means tomorrow's episode will come even quicker too. And on that note, I'm going to cheekily sneak out the back door. But don't worry, I'll return again tomorrow. So thanks for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.